You are with the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries Virtual Bible. Welcome again. We have a fantastic show for you this afternoon. We have Elders Troy and Castrilli. We also have Priest Andel. And today we will be discussing a very unique topic, and that will be that of ancestral worship. What is it? Who does it? Why is it done? Should it be done? Should it not be done? What are the questions? What are the burning issues surrounding this? Is it possible that some people could be doing it, not even realize that they're doing it? What nations under the sun partake in this? You know, we're going to give you the whole 10 to 1, the whole 1 to 10 this afternoon. I would like to turn the mic over at this time. At this time, I'll turn the mic over. Welcome everybody once again to the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries Virtual Bible. And we have an excellent panel for you today. We have the two elders, and we also have Priest Andel. So at this point, we would like you, as usual, to remember the three things to do. Number one is to get a King James version of the Bible. Number two, please take notes. And finally, always contact the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries if you have any questions. Now, you could reach us at Facebook, Israelite.nation. Also at Twitter, follow us at Israelite Nation. If you have any questions, you can email us at questions@israelitenation.com. The first slide has several pictures of several groups of people that are partaking in different types of rituals. Could you go from one slide to the next and kind of give us your thoughts of what's going on here?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, pleasure once again to join the virtual Bible. I am Priest Andel, very, very excited to be here. Those of you listening at home or on the recorded show, good afternoon, good evening, good morning to wherever you are in the GOs. Ancestral worship, very, very provocative topic. In fact, when I look at the imagery and I look at the four different shots that make this collage of images here, they all got chickens over their heads, and they're involved in some kind of a hocus pocus ritual. That is the imagery of what I would consider today to be what people may call witchcraft. It's something. That imagery there is so profound. The problem is that the practice that a lot of these institutions have is similar to this, but it's not so forthcoming. Mm-hmm. And like what Elder Bob said, are people doing it today? Are they not? Is people doing it without realizing what they're doing? The answer is yes, in my humble opinion. That there's great institutions out there that look very, very polished as shirt and tie organizations. People look very civilized, and they are very civilized. But behind the closed doors, the people or the ones in authority are actually participating in rituals similar to these things and calling on not the God written about in the Bible from Genesis to Revelations, but they're calling upon spirits and ghosts. I'll say ghosts for the, so everyone can kind of understand, right? Mm-hmm. They're calling on ghosts, people who are calling on ghosts to help them with different things that they're doing. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Maybe you guys share a different opinion or the same opinion.
Elder Troy, I want to get you in here. What do you think of what's the connection? Why do we have ancestral worship up here, but yet we see one of the common factors is what's with the animals and what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, the interesting thing is, as Priest Andel was talking about, that this is pretty much witchcraft. I mean, you look and you see all the different cultures. There's about 6 different variations of people, culture that's on this slide, and they all have in common the chicken. We all see each of them. One has the one on the head, the other is holding it and waving it around, doing whatever. The other guy looks like he's got blood or he's drinking it or something.
He's eating a heart. He's eating some
He's
heart, or
Yeah.
the heart of a pig.
Is that
Pig?
what it is? Pig or
You're good.
is it
But
goat
It probably is.
It looks like a
It's the heart of a pig.
Yeah.
Well,
an organ of an
So
animal.
what's
organ
what's
as
the
an animal.
connection there? What's the connection between the animals and what is that?
Well, when I look at it and I think about in the scriptures where the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and God of Jacob told his people to do sacrifices. So you have sacrifices for the sins of the people, or sacrifices for the Passover, things that were done in a way to alleviate people from their sins or the things that they were doing.
Yeah.
But there were specific reasons why they were doing these things. It was never to call on spirits, or, as Priest Daniel was saying, like, imagine these people are calling on Casper, Casper the friendly ghost, to come along and to help them out.
Yeah.
When it was never to be this way. It was always for the God of Israel to be the one to help us and to answer our prayers and to guide us along the way. And we see that through all the prophets that he had sent to help us, Moses and Jeremiah, Isaiah, all of them, right? But now,
Yeah.
what are they doing? They're taking matters into their own hands, and now they're calling on an uncle, a
Yeah.
grandmother,
Correct.
spirit of something or another to
But
do
but
whatever they need.
Elder Castrulli, what is wrong with that? Like, let me frame this for a second. Somebody's uncle that they love and they're dear to and has helped raise them, and they had a great relationship, unfortunately passed away. And what is actually wrong with entertaining the presence, or what's left, the only piece that person has left of that individual that was so dear to him or her? What is so wrong with that?
The thing, going back to what my colleague said about going back to the scriptures, if you want to serve the supreme God, you don't call upon anybody else but him. There's a part that comes to mind for me in the scriptures is when, even in the book of Revelations, when John, he went even to bow to the messenger that brought him this message of Revelations. And what did he say to him? He said, don't do that. I'm one of your colleagues. Worship God. Don't do what you're doing and bow to me. I'm a man like you. So if you want to serve the supreme God, he has specific instructions, specific laws and statutes that he gives unto his people, as was said by Elder Troy here. Moses, from the tribe of Levi, tell the people, and this is specifically what you do. So we don't go towards emotion. We don't go towards, if you want to serve the supreme God, this is what you do, Israel. This is what the Israelites are to do, to serve me and to know me.
But that's a big thing. You're telling somebody that, their mother, let's use somebody's mother. Everyone has a mother.
Absolutely.
Somebody's mother passes on, and you're telling them that they can't engage. First you're acknowledging the fact that maybe that person's spirit is still around, a piece of them is still around, and you're telling that person that they can't do that. What is so wrong with that? Like,
There's nothing wrong. So let me be specific with the answer. So in my opinion, there is nothing wrong with people doing the things that we saw on the previous slide.
okay.
They are more than welcome to do that. Now,
I
here's
thought you were
where
going to say but.
Yeah.
I was waiting. But.
However,
You know,
However.
if they want to align themselves. So here's a choice men have. If they want to align themselves with the God in the Bible, then there is a problem in doing that, because the Bible, the scriptures given by holy men from God, tells us exactly the rules of engagement. It tells us that, number one, the God that we serve in the Bible is a living God. Those that worship him are in the land of the living. He is a living God. And then the slide that you're currently seeing, it talks about the dead. And if Psalm 115 verse 17 says that the dead praise not the Lord, neither any that go down into silence. So it tells us that the affiliation with those who have passed on doesn't profit anything in the worshiping of a living God. So you go down the path of velcroing yourself to the dead, you will then serve a God who is over the dead, the God of the dead.
But
right?
I don't know of a religion, a philosophy out there that doesn't somehow connect with those that have passed on. There's not one out there that I know of. Are you saying then that all of these people, all of these practices are wrong?
Okay, so when we're saying we don't know of anything out there, are we specifically saying philosophies? Because within the religion, the true doctrine that was given to Moses and all the prophets that believe in the Bible, they never did anything like that, right? Not the faithful servants never did anything like that. Now, when you look at what's happening in the world, we have to come to the realization that there's a great amount of selfishness within ancestral worshiping. Why? Because when a person passes from this life onto the next stage or phase or wherever it is that they go, they're supposed to go there. But what they do is they anchor them to this world and try to use them to do whatever it is that they want to do with that familiar spirit and use it for their bidding. And that's not right, because we know even when Jesus was on the cross and he looked to the two that was there with him, and he turned to the one that was compassionate and said to him, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." So we know that there is a place, and we're not talking about heaven here, and that's a whole different topic and something for another lesson.
Kingdom of God.
Right, but now we're talking about paradise. We're talking about a place for them to go, which is obviously a different realm or a different reality or whatever you might want to call it from this world. So as Priest Randall was saying, that the dead praise not the Lord. The praising God is for the living while we are alive, and everything that we can do with that gift of life. We have to use that opportunity to pray. So whatever it is that they're doing out there, it's not in the same line with what's happening in the Bible.
Okay, so Elder Castrilli, and this is just purely ironic, but let's talk about the Catholic Church for a second. And
This is your
Priest Handel,
expertise.
too.
This is your
This
thing.
is he's an expert. I think
yeah, well, I
He
mean,
has great-
Priest Handel, Elder
You're
Castrilli, I
just
mean,
going
either
by-
one
by
could be our expert
Castrilli.
panelist on Catholicism. But let's talk about Catholicism, and let's, I mean, they are the second largest philosophy, organized so-called religion on the planet. And a lot of key aspects to what their rites are, their rituals, have some connection to the dead. Could you talk about that for a second and kind of break it down, whether that's right, wrong?
Well, the thing is with the Catholic Church, let's say, it has so many so-called saints. It has so many one is for this. If you have an ear problem, you pray to so and so. If you have an eye, you pray to so and so. Going back to what my colleagues have been stating, and it's all over the scriptures, is that you shall serve no other God but me, Israel. You shall serve. Actually, it's the number one commandment. So in the Catholic Church, in the institution, you have so much that's going on, that you go to this one or to this one or to this one.
Yeah,
Now,
I'm going to play angel's advocate here for a
Okay,
second. I'm going to play
yeah.
angel's advocate.
Yeah.
With all due respect,
Yeah.
I mean, the person's mother is not a god. They're just trying to stay connected with the person who brought them into this, who gave them that life, that they, you know what I mean? They're trying to stay connected or honor their memory or hold a piece of them. I argue that has anything to do with the first commandment.
Can I ask a question? Maybe throw in a question to that.
Sure.
In the scriptures, it says after death is judgment. So once a person passes on, is judged. So now, person's going to pray. They can't do anything about their own situation. Now, somebody else is going to be praying for them to help them. What are they going to do for them if they can't do anything for themselves? Question. Maybe to the audience out there, or what are they going to do for this other person? They cannot change anything. Now, while you're in this body, in this physical body, things can be done, things can be changed. Up to that last, as Elder Troy mentioned, the one beside Jesus, he showed humility. He showed this, and Jesus the Christ turned to him and said, "You shall be with me in paradise." The other guy, he totally ignored him because he was very arrogant, still carry on, whatever he was. He didn't say anything to him. So now you're going to pray to somebody that is a family member that can't do anything about their own situation? So what are they going to do for you? Question.
Well, maybe they may not do anything for me, but I mean, I'm just still keeping connected with them. Is that so wrong? Is that so wrong, Priest Andal?
It isn't wrong. Again, when we discuss here the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, we are like the modern day kind of church, in that we don't go out there to influence individuals. We don't go out there on a converting campaign. We basically will teach this doctrine to those who come to be taught about our culture and about our God. So if they remain outside of our culture and our God, they are free, as the scripture will always say, to do whatsoever they want to do. If they want to, like the Catholic Church, have relics of their people who have passed on and bring it into their place of worship and put it under their altar, and they want to build their churches over catacombs, they are free to do so.
Is that all true, by the way? What
Yeah,
those
it's
things you're saying?
100%. It's 100%. They are free to do so. However, if they want to pray and align themselves to the living God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob,
That's the point.
that's where it is forbidden. That practice is forbidden because he will not answer their prayers. He will not visit the place. The scriptures are specific. The reason why we say what we say is not because we dreamt it and made it up. The reason why we do what we do is not because we felt we had a brilliant idea, brilliant concept on a way of life. Moses went through all the levels of heavens during his 40 days of fasting, brought down these instructions written by the finger of God that says, hey, if there is a dead body in a tent, the entire tent is unclean for 7 days.
Yeah.
You got to wash everything, break it if it's earthen. You got to basically remove yourself from anything that is holy. Moses, when he went through the layers of heavens through the 40 days of his fasting, and he got the writings from the finger of God instructions said that, listen, if you want to pray and worship me and you touch a dead body, you have to separate yourself, and you have to understand the difference between clean and unclean, holy and unholy. Yeah. So, our job here is very simple.
But Pre-Sandal,
Yeah.
you spoke about two different things, and I'm going to get Elder Troy to jump in here in a second, but address this to me for a second.
Sure.
You spoke about the uncleanliness of a dead body, or somebody comes in contact with to a dead body. Now, is there a difference between a dead body and someone that has passed on? Because my uncle, my mother, my friend that is close to me, they're buried. We had the ceremony for them already, and they're gone. Yeah. But yet, I have a little candle in my bedroom, and I pray there, and sometimes the hair stands up on the back of my neck, and I know it's them. I just know it's them. How does that plug into the?
Pre-Sandal for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. Jump in there.
It just very keep it short, right? It's the remembering is important. We remember our family. We remember our family. It's the rituals that are connected that is the key. Remembering, we remember the prophets every week. We remember Moses every week. We remember Jesus the Christ. We talk about them all the time. It's that ritual of...
Can I be you for a second now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I told you I was going to keep it short. But I kept going.
So the slide that's also up there for our viewers and listeners to see, well, if you can advance to the next slide for me, please, Garth. It shows you, and you click a little bit more so the text can roll in there for me, if you don't mind. There we go. It tells you, again, by the finger of God, when Moses went through what he went through, it talked about necromancers. Okay? It says that is forbidden, a forbidden practice among the people of God.
Yes.
Necromancy is similar to what you're saying here. It is the ritual of communicating, not with a dead body. Okay, let's be specific now, because Elder Bob asked, well, if it's a dead body, is it different from those who've passed on? Right. Necromancy talks about those who have passed on, and the act of communicating with them is forbidden.
Israel.
Yeah, it is. For the people of God, what you see on your screen is a forbidden practice. Now, this looks really, this looks very detailed, and probably people would say, well, I don't do that. I don't go to make a circle around myself in the graveyard at 12 midnight and call a ghost. But when you do bring a relic of someone who has passed, when you do light a candle and you put their ashes, and you put a picture there, and you go down there every morning and you put a fresh flower and you say happy birthdays, and you talk, and you visit the gravesite, and you have picnics and so forth. It's the same ritual, just different ways of going about it, but it has the same results. You're communicating with those who have passed on, and Moses, with the law that he brought down, the statutes and commandments from the living God, says that those who want to worship me cannot do that.
That's right.
Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to this original slide, okay? You guys can't see it right now, but it's up there for our listeners and viewers to see. But what I want to do is I want to ask Elder Troy a question, in that this slide here that we're looking at, it shows, when you instantly look at this, you see, the first thing that comes to my mind is weird. There's a lot of weird stuff going on here. Okay? But again, going back to something that was said earlier by Priest Andal, there is no picture here. Actually, there it is in the middle. It's actually there.
Which one?
It's there in the middle, right below. And so,
yes,
my question was going to be, there are what we call, quote unquote, mainstream religions, right? Anglican, Catholic, Greek Orthodox, those, and they're not seen as weird, like, the probably African tribe woman here, the South American woman with the thing in her nose, and the guy eating the goat heart, and the Indian South Asian lady there. These are fringe religions. But talk to me a second about what Priest Andal mentioned about the Catholic Church and the relics, and are they any different? Is there a difference here?
There's absolutely no difference. There's none whatsoever. They do the same thing that you see every other culture, every other philosophy they're doing. They have all the dead worshiping, just like everyone else. The ancestral worshiping, calling on the dead, allowing the dead to help them, or to guide them, or to be a part of everything that they do.
Yeah.
That is not what serving the one and only true living God is about. There's no dead in it. We look at something in the scriptures like Passover. And Passover is something that every single person under the sun that was a part of the God's family was supposed to do. They were supposed to keep the Passover.
Mm-hmm.
But if for any reason they would come into contact with a dead body, then that's it. They couldn't keep Passover. They would have to separate themselves because they would be unclean.
Yeah,
Until
you have to wait the next month.
Right,
Right.
until that time
Second
has
month.
passed, then within the second month,
Yeah.
then they could keep it. It's simply showing that the dead is not in the same company, in the same group as the living. And the God of the Bible, which is the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, he's the God of the living, the God of Israel. And you have to separate the dead from the living, the clean from the unclean, the holy from the unholy. And these things are not clean. You cannot have a cemetery in the middle of your church. Or, as Priest Handel was saying, which he was so right in saying, that you cannot have your church built over the top of dead bodies. Because that means that your whole environment, so imagine this slide here that you have up with the necromancy. Imagine if the church was actually sitting on top of all those tombstones.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, and I'm sure for a lot of the listeners, if they really understood that or viewed it that way,
Mhm.
their skin would crawl.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. You know, when you advance the slide, I was gonna point out what it was on that slide. If you can go back a little bit to that collage, because I think for those, as Elder Troy said, those listening at home, it's very important that, as you know, in our virtual Bible, we kind of walk you guys through who are listening at home and drill down a little deep so you get all the color that we're discussing here. And that image that's right under, you may not recognize what that is. So let me spell it out for you. That image that's right under the writing Ancestral Worship is a man lying in a open casket, okay? And it's a body of a man that is lying in a open casket,
I see it.
and he is actually involved in, I mean, this is a Catholic shrine, okay, or a church, okay? And it's one of the this is what they do. They bring the dead bodies of sometimes popes, okay?
Yes.
They lay them down with candles all around them, and they
Burn
what do they
incense.
do? Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
like think of it, like Elder Troy said, if you really think about it, just think about it. If the Bible forbids this kind of practice for the holy people serving their God, and the opposite is true here, where they roll in the body of a deceased pope, put candles, dress him, put candles all around him, burn incense all around him in their place of worship. What are they trying to do? Are they not communicating or trying to communicate with that person who has passed on?
Yes.
Necromancing?
Yes.
Can I just throw something
Yeah, absolutely.
quickly on what you're saying there, Priest Handel? Because you know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of when people are celebrating their birthday. Right? Just the way how you
Yeah.
described it, how they have them dressed up, have the Pope dressed up in the casket and roll them in and have candles all around. And I'm thinking about people who celebrate their birthdays and then they're celebrating life, right? And they put candles in the cake as a form of celebrating, and then they blow out the candles and it's supposed to be good. This seems very, like in the same way almost like if you're trying to give life back to that hope. You're trying to create that sort of that energy.
You are. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And that is exactly what they're doing. I mean, as Israelites, we don't put candles in any type of birthday cakes or anything like that. But just speaking to something that the audience could relate to make the comparison, to see that they're trying to give life back to the dead, and you cannot do that. When you're dead, you're dead.
Can I jump? Can I say something?
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually going to ask you a question, but go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Priest Garth, you mentioned earlier where you see all these rituals are going on with so many philosophies, institutions out there, correct?
Right.
They all are involved with it. I want to just read the scripture, if I may. It's Jesus the Christ speaking in Matthew 7. And he says, "Enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. And many there be which go in thereat." This gate that is wide, there's so many that go this way that leads to destruction. Because straight is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. I just wanted to read that. I think it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty clear. Like you mentioned earlier.
Why is
Why
that
would
clear?
I read that?
No, why is that clear? How is that clear?
Because Priest Garth is saying everybody's going this way.
Okay.
And so many just go this way, overtaken by emotion, overtaken by, that moment of despair where everybody's jumping all over them. Get this, get that, get this, and they're very vulnerable at that time when somebody passes on that's close to you, family member. But it's saying that the gate is very wide that leads to destruction, that many people just go this way and follow this way.
Everybody does. Everybody partakes in that. Everybody partakes in that.
That opposite way is going to be very few. So when you read the scriptures about the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, and his servant Moses, he said, "This bring to the people of Israel, teach them these laws, these statutes and commandments." He's very specific because he knows we're flesh. We're vulnerable. We're open, emotional, these things. But he's saying they got to stay strong because everybody else is doing it. But I don't want my children to be doing this.
Okay, so I'm going to ask another question here because we're back to the slide with the necromancy here.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm thinking out there because, I just want to stimulate the conversation and ask the questions that maybe the people at home are thinking or asking. Now, break it down, and anyone could jump in on this. Break it down for me. When you talk about necromancy, okay, who are we talking about here? Because we got to be clear in terms of where the line is. Because I can think somebody saying, okay, fine, I go to my psychic. I pay her $25, and she does a little reading and finds out whether I'm gonna get a girlfriend or a boyfriend or not, or what's gonna happen, whether I'm gonna get that new job that I want or not, and may think that that's okay, and may look at the person who is participating in the voodoo ritual and think, oh, what a weirdo. So, like, where does this start and where does this stop? What's the full breadth of this? How wide of a net are we casting here to catch, what's being done wrong? Someone jump in on that.
Sure. And that's a very good question. And not only is it a good question, I've probably been through that scenario a dozen times with discussions and debates with individuals outside of this nation. It's really to reprogram the mind of individuals to understand that what they see is not necessarily what is true. We have to go layers deeper to understand the source.
Okay.
Once we start to drill down a little deeper, and again, it's not just a one-word answer that we can give to people, as we all know that. It's to really grasp the understanding of God as a spirit, and those that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Yes. And in the spirit, there's rules of conduct. There's things you got to do spiritually that are either good or bad. right? They have good results or bad results. You could either end up on the side of truth or lie by the things that the rituals that you do, whether you know or you don't know, whether you do it in ignorance.
Yes.
And then, it breaks down to, fine, you don't go to the graveyard at 12 midnight. I get that. The majority of people don't really do that. I get that you don't take the chicken over your head or you don't bite the heart of a pig. I get that. Most people don't do that, right? But you get the same results, even if, again, like you mentioned, in the Catholic faith, and we have some background with that. You pray. There's different gods, small g gods. You pray to for different things. In Hinduism, I know lots of Hindus. They have different gods for different things, and that's fine for them. But the scripture, the Bible, is what we read here at the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, because we're Israelites.
But yeah,
So
if nothing bad happens,
Yeah.
if nothing negative happens out of going to the palm reader or the crystal ball reader or the Hindu, is it no harm, no foul?
Yeah, but you see, the teachings of the prophets, the teachings of the holy men, never said that those individuals will have bad days. It never gives you any background to those individuals. It says actually that those who align themselves to the devil or Lucifer, they basically prosper for a while. They grow like a green bay tree, and eventually they will be cut down. But they grow, they prosper. When Lucifer or Satan had met Jesus the Christ on the mountaintop, he says, "I will give you all the riches of the world, if you shall only but bow down, serve me."
Right.
So we understand that those who go this other route of necromancy and necromancing and be necromancers are individuals that sit in high powers in this world today. Let's call them out, like the Freemasons of the world.
Yes.
They do. And they run the world. They have the riches of this earth. Why? Because they align to Satan. They do. So, if we're looking for those who are going to palm readers to come out of the palm reader shop to be hit with a lightning bolt, it's probably not going to happen like that. But you mentioned one thing, Elder Castrilli, which is after death is judgment. That's the day we all find out. When we are judged, whether it be the rich or the poor, like Lazarus and the rich man, we will find out if we go to Abraham's bosom, or if we go in the part where there was a big gulf fixed.
Don't want to be on that
Scary.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the reality.
Yes.
So you're right, Elder Bob. The people are probably going to say, "Well, geez, I go to Maria and she reads my palms and I'm doing great." Hey, you probably will do great all the days of your life, but that's your physical life.
Right. And in addition to that, one could also look and say, look at the size and wealth of the organization that puts the bones of dead people under their altars. Look at their success.
Well, we got to look at a few things. We got to look at what Elder Castrilli read.
Yep.
Okay, in Matthew 7, we have to look at that the broad gate, the mass, doesn't mean that it's right, and doesn't say that you're with the God of Israel. And going off of something that Priest Andel said, as I was sitting here listening to him, I found it very interesting, because when you look and you say, okay, here's all these people that they have the wealth of the world and they're benefiting, and they're in line with who? Who are they? Who are they serving? If they're serving Satan, if they're serving Lucifer, what is his position? Who is he? Is he the master of a life, or is he the master of death?
That's the point.
Right? And if he's the master of death, like we got to think about it, because like sometimes the line is so fine that it's difficult, it's almost hard to see it because it's so fine. But if you really and truly think about it, that if you're worshiping the dead, if you're doing ancestral worshiping, if you're communicating with the dead, if the dead is helping you, Whether it's your mom, your dad, your grandparents, your uncle, your auntie, whatever, whomever they may be, they're of the dead. We're not talking about when they were alive and how good they were, how nice they were, what you remember, how much you loved them, how much they loved you, what they did for you, and the relationship. We're not talking about when they were alive. Because most of them were great, wonderful people. Like as Elder Bob was saying, well, geez, this is, your mom or your aunt or your uncle. Like, they were good to you. They were nice. They were kind to you. The relationship of when they were alive. Like, that's what it's about. Because now that they have died or passed on, you hold on to the memories. And to see their spirit...
Yes.
Right? It might give people some form of comfort. But if we're to look at the realism, like let's get real, who is the master of death? Who controls that realm? So we have to look and say, if you're worshiping the dead, you're worshiping Satan.
Simple.
You're
Bottom
worshiping
line.
Lucifer.
Bottom line.
That's
Straight
what
up.
it is.
Straight up.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Straight
Like
up.
we're not
Yeah.
calling the people that have passed on Satan. We're not. That's not what's being said
Yes.
here. I want to be very, very clear. We're talking about the philosophy, the ideology of worshiping
Yes,
the dead.
exactly.
Then there's got to be a boss man. If you're worshiping the living, there is a boss man. The one and only true living God. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The one who put it all together.
Yeah.
He is the author and the master of life.
Yeah.
So there's the yin and the yang, the good and the bad.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
opposites. So let's go to the opposite side
Yeah.
of life. There's a boss man. There's a person who controls that area. So indirectly,
Yeah.
you're worshiping Satan.
Bottom line.
There's a scripture we got to get into.
Okay.
But before we get into 1 Samuel, Elder Castrelli, I think you have that on cue. I wanted to go to Matthew 23,
Sure.
27. I got it already.
You
so
got it
I'll
already?
read, I'll read
You
it.
read
All
it,
right,
you'll
go
read
ahead,
it.
yeah.
And it says, woe unto you. Again, it's Matthew 23. For those of you who are reading along, taking notes, we do encourage you for that. It's the King James Version, whether it's your digital Bible or your printed Bible. King James Version, Matthew 23, verse 27. It says, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones and of all uncleanness.
It
And
goes
when
back
you-
to
yeah,
physical.
yes,
That
it goes
physical
back
you
to
were
that.
saying. Yeah.
Like when we look in Elder Bob had asked questions about, well, these institutions boast billions of people, so why are they so wrong? And then you read about the broad way and those who go down that path, and straight and narrow is the way that only a few will select. And then you look at those cathedrals and those mega churches.
Massive.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And then when you go into it and you realize there is a pope, actually, a deceased pope, with candles all around him, or you walk on the floor and you see within the glass chambers in the floor and in the walls deceased popes.
Wow.
As you're walking to go worship God, you are seeing them all in the walls, mummified in the walls. And as you walk through them, then you read the scripture and it says, hey, outwardly you appear to be very, very beautiful. There's no questions about
Gold.
that. Yeah, gold.
All over the place. Top and
But
bottom.
inside, you're full of dead men's bones, all manner of uncleanness.
Literally.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the things that you got to look at. Now, when you transit into something like 1 Samuel, and you summarize that story, which deals with Saul and deals with when Saul became, really desperate to find help and find a solution, and at that point, God had basically cut him off because he was disobedient in a number of things. What did he go to do? He thought to himself, well, hey, if God's not going to answer me, I'm going to do like the people of this earth.
Yes.
I'm going to follow their method. And what they do is they try to communicate to those who have passed on. for answers.
That's right.
I am going to do the same thing. But then when we read the story, what do we find out at the end? Because there's always the beginning and an end. The end result, God, was he happy with that, you know? And this is where we got to go.
But even, and this we don't hear, we don't see this part when people are waving around chickens and eating pig hearts and stuff like that. But how did Samuel react to him?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What was Samuel's reaction?
Let's read it,
Right?
Shirley.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 28.
Yep.
We're going to start from verse 3. Now Samuel was dead, and all Israel had lamented him and buried him in Ramah, even in his own city. And Saul had put away those, he had put away those that had familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. Saul did this.
Yeah.
Okay, an Israelite.
He passed the law.
And the Philistines gathered themselves together and came and pitched in Shunem. And Saul gathered all Israel together, and they pitched in Gilboa. And when Saul saw that the host of the Philistines, he was afraid. When he saw the host of the Philistines, he was afraid, the enemy. And his heart greatly trembled. This is Saul. And when Saul inquired of the Lord answered him not.
Wow.
Neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by the prophets. Then said Saul unto his servants, Seek me a woman that hath a familiar spirit. But you saw what he did earlier on. He had put them out.
Yeah.
Then said Saul unto his servants, Seek me a woman that hath a familiar spirit, that I may go to her and inquire of her.
Can we just stop for a quick second?
Any place, man.
Because just this whole thing about seek me a woman with a familiar spirit, what are we talking about here? Like, what exactly is that saying? Right?
So let's fast forward into 2012, and let's see if we can map the image of what this is in 2012 to what actually was happening with Saul.
Okay.
So seek me a woman. So okay, let's go down Queen Street for us in Toronto.
Okay.
And then we look for a woman who, oh, hey, there's a tarot reader.
Okay.
It's a tarot reader. Hey, there's a woman. We walk into her shop. She sits there. She has some cards on her table, some candles, and her head tied. So we have reached the destination of finding a woman. Okay. This woman who is sitting around the table now to do the tarot card reading and whatever she does in palm and fortune telling.
What does she look like?
Is
her head tied? Is her what she describe her?
Yeah, absolutely. Her head's tied and
right.
I haven't personally seen it, but
the Hollywood depiction.
Yeah.
Right. So
come on, everyone's seen Ghost.
Everyone's seen that.
Yeah.
So you go there, and then she starts to tell you about what you've asked her, and she is divining. She is seeking a source that is not the God written about in the Bible, because we just read Saul removed those kind of people from the land. Why did he do it? He was an Israelite, and he knows that that's forbidden. That's against God.
He was the king.
So Saul went and found a woman just like what we just talked about.
Well, we saw what state Saul was in now.
Yeah,
he was getting no answers.
No answers from God.
So he was in despair. He was like,
So can I throw something in, going along with what you're saying? And Elder Bob mentioned it, and I was thinking it. So if we could go back, just to give the viewers an exact picture in their minds of what we're talking about. If we can go back to the movie Ghosts, right, where what was it, Patrick Swayze?
Yeah, with Whoopi Goldberg.
Right?
Yeah.
When he was with Whoopi.
Yeah.
So here's a Whoopi. She's the person, she can't really see him, but she can hear him. And he's there with her. And when she goes to the girlfriend, right, was Demi Moore.
The wife,
goes to the wife,
Yeah.
and she's saying, tell her, Patrick Swayze saying to Whoopi, tell her about when we went to that vacation and what happened, and tell her what this means and all of that. So are we saying that that's what a familiar spirit is, to actually have a ghost sitting there with the living person and feeding that living person information?
That's exactly what we're saying.
Wow.
And when you say ghost, as someone who has
somebody's
passed on.
died and
Right.
passed on.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's a perfect example of what you
Yeah.
all were talking about earlier. If you use
Yes.
that movie as an example,
Yes.
you know, here is Patrick Swayze's character as the loved one
Yes.
of Demi Moore's character, but yet Whoopi Goldberg, who is the psychic,
Yeah.
is actually in contact with that person who is loved one who's passed on.
Yes.
And of course, she's going to get blown away. She's like, whoa, how do you know that? How do you know that?
You know, that makes me think of something here now. Because now you're going to have, or we're going to have viewers, they're going to say, well, what about those people? Right? This popped into my head, and sorry, you could continue to read it
Yeah,
and
no.
say that.
Go
I'll
ahead.
just read.
No,
But what
please.
about those people who somebody gets murdered,
Yeah.
and then there's a person that's a reader,
Yeah.
and then they can now go, and when they go, the person tells them that whoever the killer was,
Yep.
and then they could go to the police now, because those psychic people sometimes they work with the police, and now they could help the dead person actually talks to the psychic, and it helps that
Yeah, absolutely.
psychic to
Yeah.
solve the crime.
Yep.
Mhm.
You know, like so there are people out there saying, well, what about that? That's a good thing. But I think that's a little different. It's a lot different. And the reason why I think that it's different is because if you have a situation that a person freshly dies or pass away fresh, and they come to you, and you might have an ability, they come to you. Number one, we don't talk to them, we don't deal with them because they're of the dead. But if they come to you and give you an insight about something, then they go away. That is completely different than willing it, killing animals, sprinkling blood, doing all these things, conjuring up, going into the cemetery, premeditating, creating the environment like that slide that had the circle in the cemetery. These are different things, and as we were saying before, that the line is very fine, and we have to be careful not to do things and put ourselves in a position where we're going to be going against God. Sorry, you can read on.
Continue. So at verse 7, then said Saul unto his servant, seek me a woman that hath a familiar spirit, and we went into it, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And we got a picture here of all that. And his servant said to him, behold, there is a woman that hath a familiar spirit at Endor. And Saul disguised himself and put on other raiment, and he went, and 2 men with him, and they came to the woman by night. So he disguised, he's sneaking around.
Yeah.
And he said, I pray thee, divine unto me by the familiar spirit, and bring me him up, whom I shall name unto thee. And the woman said unto him, behold, thou knowest that Saul hath done, how he hath cut off those that have familiar spirits. This is what the woman said unto him.
She probably didn't recognize him.
Right, behold, thou knowest that Saul hath done, and she's speaking to him, how he hath cut off all those that have familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. Wherefore then layest thou a snare for my life to cause me to die? And Saul sware to her by the Lord, saying, as the Lord liveth, there shall no punishment happen to thee for this thing. Then said the woman, whom shall I bring up unto thee? And he said, bring me up Samuel. And when the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice. And the woman spake to Saul, saying, why hast thou deceived me? For thou art Saul. Now she knew who he was.
Yeah.
Right, because who else would bring up, who else would ask to bring up Samuel. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the king said unto her, be not afraid, for what sawest thou? And the woman said unto Saul, I saw gods ascending out of the earth. And he said unto her, what form is he of? And she said, an old man cometh up, and he is covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived that it was Samuel. And he stooped with his face to the ground and bowed himself. And Samuel said to Saul, why hast thou disquieted me?
Wow.
to bring me up? And Saul answered, I am sore distressed. See that? For the Philistines make war against me, and God is departed from me, and answereth me no more, neither by prophets, nor by dreams. Therefore have I called thee, that thou mayest make known unto me what I shall do.
Wow.
Then said Samuel, Wherefore then dost thou ask of me, seeing the Lord is departed from thee, and is become thine enemy?
Wow.
And the Lord hath done to him as he spake by me. For the Lord hath rent the kingdom out of thine hand, and given it to thy neighbor, even to David.
So what's the point here? Summarize for me, because we only have about 3-4 minutes left, and we have one more scripture to go through.
The point here is that people, I guess, when they feel they're in a desperate situation,
That's it.
and they can't get the answers that they feel that they need to get in the time that they want to get it from God, they will turn to ungodly measures. And we see that here very clear, that Samuel has said, why do you bring me up? And Saul has answered and said, God's departed from me. Right? Saul has said, God has departed from me. I don't know what to do. The enemy is going to overtake me, so I need to know what to do. So the mere idea, this simply explains to us that when God is not answering people, they turn to the dead. And that's not right, because we know that we have to have patience. And this is where your faith comes in.
This is, Elder Troy, if you don't mind me.
No,
You read all over the scriptures, wait on the Lord.
Yes.
Wait. Be patient. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord, from Psalm 27. This case here is the opposite. Quick results.
Deuteronomy chapter 18. It basically talks about, when we go into the land, when the Israelites go into the land of the Canaanites to possess it, make sure that we don't take on the rituals and the practice of those that are there. So no charmers, no necromancers, no one who is a wizard or familiar spirits. Remove them and get them out of the land, and don't follow that kind of a pattern, right? So again, everyone has a choice. Everyone has a choice. So we're not saying that you are damned and condemned if you do what you do. But if you want to serve this God written about in the Bible, there is a right and a wrong way to serve him. And the wrong way is to worship the dead or get involved in any rituals that pertain to the dead. That is wrong if you're looking to follow the God.